Hey guys, Darren here. Welcome to Mayhem Country Living. This is episode 4 of the Man Building Monday episodes. And these things are kind of informal chats, thoughts on what makes a man strong internally. And this could involve stories I've heard, or a lot of times I draw from the stories and mistakes of my youth. And I remember one time very vividly sitting on the porch with my grandfather. He and I sat on the porch a lot. 2 big black rocking chairs on the concrete porch. And a lot of times I would sit on the steps and he would give me his pocket knife and I would whittle. I bet you I might have been 6 or 7. And my mother and my grandmother had gone to the Piggly Wiggly to go do something, some sort of shopping. And they went to the Piggly Wiggly so they could get their green stamps. Or you went to the A&P store. You guys remember green stamps? Fill out the books. That's a whole different episode. But we were sitting on the porch. Granddaddy was rocking, chewing his tobacco, and he would chew Levi Garrett, Red Man, Skoal, Mule Train, Cannonball, just whatever he had a mind to chew, chewing tobacco, pouches or plugs or twists. For those of you who don't know, a pouch is, honest to goodness, a moist pouch of shredded tobacco leaves. Sometimes they're flavored. A plug is a small square brick. Modern comparison's about half as big as an iPhone and twice as thick. And a twist would be a kind of like a horseshoe shaped tobacco leaf, twisted and dried. And so he was sitting there, and I remember this though. It was Red Man moist pouch tobacco. And so he would sit there, give him a handful, chew and spit, and I'd be sitting there whittling, learning how to whittle little things. And I said, "Granddaddy, what's that stuff you keep putting in your mouth?" He said, "Oh, this is chewing tobacco, boy." I said, "Is it good?" He said, "Oh, it's fantastic. I love this stuff. Would you like some?" And I looked and I said, "Yeah." And he bent over, opened the pouch up, spread it out, and I took out a little string of it. And I went to, he said, No, you got to get more than that, boy. That's not enough. You got to grab a handful of it and stick it in there. And I said, "Okay." And so I took it, put it in there, and I had a big mouthful of it like that. And I said, He says, "Good, isn't it?" And I said, He said, "Now chew." And so I'd chew, and Granddaddy would sit there and chew, and he would lean over and spit. And I'd chew, and I'd lean over to spit, and he'd say, No, old men spit. Young men swallow it because they're strong." And I said, "Okay." Swallowed, chewing. He was chewing and spitting, and I was chewing and swallowing. And it started getting hot on that porch. Whew. I started turning green, and he was chewing and spitting and just watching me. And I was chewing and swallowing, chewing and swallowing. And all of a sudden, I just leaned over the porch and threw up so badly. I threw up everywhere, all over the side of the porch. And Granddad just looks at, And I spit out the tobacco. He said, "Sometimes that happens." He said, "Come here and get some more, boy." I said, "No, thank you." He said, "Do you want any more?" I said, "No, thank you." He said, "Do you think you'll ever want any more?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Well, sounds good then." And that is why I never chewed tobacco, ever, after that. Never, ever, ever chewed tobacco after that. Not snuff, not twist, not plug, not pouch. Because that was one habit that I never picked up. That made an imprint in me. Goodness gracious. That was a very hard lesson to learn. A very bad tasting one as well. One of the other things I remember Granddaddy telling me about years ago, and he said that they would go to church, they would go to singings, and he said he would walk miles and miles to go to these church singings down these dirt roads. And he'd say sometimes he wore his shoes, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he didn't have shoes. This was depression. And I said, why don't you go to church so much? He says, the simple fact of the matter is, boy, they fed you. When you went to a Baptist church, you were assured to at least get a piece of chicken. And I said, oh. So he said sometimes he would walk miles to go to a church singing or a camp meeting or a tent revival, and then he would turn around and walk to another one because they would feed him there at that one, and then they'd feed him at the next one. And I asked him, and this was an interesting thing, I just remembered this recently, and I asked him, I said, what did you do if you were out late that night? He said, sometimes I'd sleep in a haystack, which I did a video on sleeping in a haystack. If you've watched me for any length of time, you can look it up. It's fairly comfortable and warm, but itchy. Take a Benadryl. And he said sometimes when I couldn't find a haystack, I'd sleep in a copse, C-O-P-S-E, a copse of trees, which is just a bunch of small trees. And I said, weren't you afraid of ghosts? And he said, nah, boy, I'm not afraid of dead things. Now, here's the thing, and I was thinking about that, and I was laughing at myself, and I thought, why the hell did he say it that way? Why didn't he say, nah, boy, there's no such thing as ghosts? But no. Granddaddy said, I'm not afraid of dead things. Reinforcing in my little head the fact that there were dead things out there, but you didn't have to be afraid of them. I'm like, holy cow. It's a wonder I didn't. It's a wonder I made it to adulthood at all. But I have to say, I learned so much from the older people in my life, learning what to do and what not to do. So I appreciate you hanging out and listening to this little story. Feel free to leave comments below about stories and lessons that you learned from your elders, men and women. This isn't just about strong men in your life, strong women too. Take care of your people.